Today, we'll talk about the one strategy that I use almost every week. I perfected this strategy. It is very easy to understand and use. We will do a great analysis from my real trades and discuss every single detail. You'll enjoy this video a lot. Hope you do not miss it. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. If you love scalping and day trading or even swing trading and looking for special trading strategies, check out my free trading course. You can find the links on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. Okay, let's talk about one of my favorite strategies that I use almost every week, as long as I can find a clear trading setup. This is an extremely powerful setup, almost my signature trading entry. Okay, you can see this lovely Bitcoin chart, and immediately anyone following me for a long time will notice this perfect equal highs. However, at the same time, you can notice these tiny equal lows at the bottom. Both equals are very magnetic. So, if you find yourself stuck between double-sided liquidity, just wait for one side to be swept. Yes, there are ways to trade it, but it is complex and needed for most people. Always try to trade easy trades. And right above the equal highs, you can notice the hourly imbalance. If you watch me for a long time, you'll know how much I love to combine liquidity and imbalances so much. There's actually another thing happening here that many people miss. A support and resistance flip area. You can clearly notice that this is a very reactive price area. So, how do we sum up what we have here? 1. Wait for equal highs or lows to be hunted. 2. Wait for an imbalance tap. 3. Watch out for support and resistance flip areas. 4. Wait for a strong reaction, a strong market structure break in lower time frames to enter a trade. Now let's switch to the 5-minute time frame and discuss it further. To be honest, finding a POE and the entry area is very easy. But the most important rule of trading is finding a POE with a clear target. Because a point of interest is only valid if it has a clear target. Write this down and stick to your computer. A POE is only valid if it has a clear target. We already pointed out the small equal lows below, as you remember. But if you look at the nature of this chart, it is far away target. There are multiple imbalance points along the road, as you can see. These are great areas to take profit from your trades. And if you check further, you will notice that there are also smaller inner equal lows along the way that you can consider taking profits. However, our main runner is below, as you can see, a combination of equal lows and imbalance. So what we do here actually quite simple strategy. Carrying price from a hunted equal highs and tapped imbalance to fresh equal lows and open imbalance, bouncing the price like a rubber ball. All great. Now let's talk about the entry. Notice the small swing failure pattern right at this area and then how the structure shifts after that. Then it creates the imbalance for a perfect entry point. And I want you to notice how the momentum slows and price consolidates before the reverse. My entry was a bit late with market order because this week I was quite busy with my real estate business. I did not show enough focus to trading, but I saw all these setups without drawing anything because it was obvious. I draw things on my charts mostly so you can see and understand what I really see. when I look at the charts. Now let's continue talking about the reactions. As you notice, price also now building a reverse parabolic liquidity against your trade. And the price can react from any possible reaction point. Is there a single soul who can guarantee that for 100%? This price will never react from one of these zones to hunt back that parabolic liquidity above. No one. This is why we take profits and leave runners for further targets most of the time. But again, it is a personal choice. Now, let's talk about a more dangerous and low probability trade that I took earlier in the week. Notice this very strong break happening right at this point and creates this nice order block at the 2 hours time frame. And there is this nice equal lows below. And notice this 2-hour inner imbalance for possible quick take profits. But the problem is this giant equal highs above, which was actually hunted in the first trade, which I showed you in the beginning of this video. Let's switch to the 15-minute and discuss it further. You can see this giant imbalance right below the order block. And also, there are these small liquidity areas and imbalances below which can pull the price. Imbalance to imbalance. Right at this point, I noticed a swing failure pattern. However, there was also something important here. If you zoom out, you'll notice this perfectly shaped SR flip area. You can see how the price reacts in this price zone. These little tiny details can bring extra confluences to your trades. Now let's get back to our trade and discuss the entry with very low time frames. You can notice right here the dragon order block with a nice large imbalance. There are two market structure breaks here. Please watch it carefully. First, the higher time frame break right here, which happened with this swing failure pattern, and the push of 2-hour order block with the giant 15-minute imbalance filled. The second market shift happens at lower time frames right here, with the push of a 3-minute dragon block with imbalance. And this happens inside the premium area of the first market structure shift. Well, if you are confused, do not worry. Please watch the video a couple of times and take notes. It is actually very clear. As for inner targeting, notice what we have here. Relative equal lows with the imbalance below. My signature targets. After this tiny imbalance, the entry was made. I published like 100 videos with real trades. Go on, watch the videos. I do the same entries and I target the same concepts over and over. I am not creating a new strategy every single day. I perfected this strategy. Now, I want you to warn you about something. Let's assume you got greedy and targeted the equal lows below. But, as I said, is there a guarantee that price will reach there? No, not at all. If you get very greedy, you'll leave home empty-handed, even worse with a loss. So, what are the lessons today? If you find yourself stuck between double-sided liquidity, let it be. Let the price hunt one side first. Try to combine your liquidity with imbalances to make them extra powerful. Before entering a trade, confirm a very strong structure shift or wait for the momentum loss. Make a habit of taking profits if your main targets are far away. And always keep protecting your account. Remember, in order to take the next trade, you will need money. If you lose all your money, how will you trade? Let the bad and low probability setups go. Wait for proper setups. Okay, folks, another adventure ends here. As always, all these trading methods are suitable for scalping, day trading, or even swing trading. I believe that it will be really helpful in your trading life. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.